Hey Donna, how's it going? Thanks for being here with us.
It's going fine, thanks.
Excellent. So you are the chair of the Assembly Committee on Agriculture.
True.
Assemblywoman here in Binghamton.
Mm-hmm.
And you've also been the champion for hemp and have you've introduced every hemp bill that has passed in New York State.
Mm-hmm.
So today we kind of want to learn a little more how that came to fruition, how that happened, and so kind of go back and when the Farm Bill passed in 2014 and allowed states to set up a pilot program, and New York was obviously a little late to the party, but you ensured that we got there, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I already was in the process of drafting legislation to legalize industrial hemp, knowing full well we probably had no chance of accomplishing that. And just as I was about to file the bill, this opportunity came before us, and I quickly amended it so that it would conform with what they were going to allow us to do. But this whole thing started when I picked up a brochure from the Vote Hemp folks at an Earth Day in 2013. I've always been aware of industrial hemp as an opportunity, and honestly, mostly from the textile side of it and building materials. I wasn't fully aware of the grain opportunities, and certainly not on the hemp extract side.
Yeah.
So we were tracking what Mitch McConnell was allowing every step of the way. So when we could do a pilot program, we began that. When they allowed us to take those materials and transport, market, and process them so they wouldn't have to be destroyed, we took advantage of that. So we've been tracking along pretty good all the way from the start.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Now, I mean, obviously, we're a leader, one of the leaders in the country. So, who did you have to go to when you first said, okay, you read this book, right, or you saw this pamphlet from Vote Hemp, and you said, all right, this is an option here in New York. Who did you go to? Did you go to the Commissioner of Agriculture? Did you go to some of your colleagues in the Assembly? What was kind of that process?
Well, I'm a legislator, and you want to try to see what's going on with your colleagues. Senator Kruger at the time had already filed a bill on industrial hemp, and it was her bill that I was going to try to mimic. I would have just introduced it as the same as her bill. And then when the Farm Bill had that provision in 2014, I approached her about how I intended to move forward. But at the time, there was a Republican majority in the Senate, and I actually wanted to get the bill done. And that's why I advised her I was going to consult with Senator O'Mara from the Elmira area, and would she mind terribly if he carried the bill and she could be primary co-sponsor of it. So I just launched forward with it.
Yeah.
But you always approach somebody in another house to find out what they're doing. And then I had to convince certainly the chair of the Committee on Agriculture at the time, Mr. McGee, and I had to basically convince my colleagues that this was something that would be a viable new commodity, agricultural commodity.
Or at least give it a shot, right? And so what were some of their reactions to that when you said we want to do hemp, right? Was it, obviously it was before, we look at the context of nowadays where everyone knows what hemp is, and hemp is the cool thing, but this is going back, 5-6 years ago when, hemp was still, it wasn't very well known, and it was associated with marijuana, right?
Well, yeah, obviously when I would say hemp, I would get quite a comical reaction, which is why I always talked about industrial hemp. But here's where Vote Hemp came into play. They had a really great fact sheet, which showed all the multiple uses. They didn't really talk about hemp extracts at the time. It was mostly about fiber and grain. And my colleagues in the Assembly were obviously much more amenable to it. I didn't have to do a lot of persuading there. Once they quickly understood we were talking about something that didn't contain a lot of THC, and it was honestly an industrial product. The Senate was going to be a little bit more of a challenge. But my colleague, who was alive at the time, Senator Libous, was the floor leader. And so working his colleagues and working with this sheet, one by one, we would explain to people, in addition, we had a did you know fact sheet. Did you know that, at one time industrial hemp was something that the colonists grew on a regular basis? Did you know that the first draft of the Declaration of Independence was on hemp paper? And through the did you know process, and also appealing to their interests in rebuilding manufacturing, largely in upstate, keeping in mind the Republican Party was controlling the Senate at the time by largely upstate members. It was that manufacturing hook that persuaded them to give this a try.
Interesting. So, when we talk about hemp, it's a bipartisan issue, right? I mean, you look at federally, Senator Wyden from Oregon and Senator McConnell came together and got the 2018 Farm Bill done. But then when we fast forward to the Hemp Extract Bill, that was passed almost unanimously in both houses, stands for a few votes. But the Hemp Extract Bill, the way, I think a lot of members of the industry see it as the next step in terms of taking it from is this a viable industry to it's going very quickly and we need to regulate it, right? So, kind of talk us through, the process to decide, okay, because obviously there was bills in between, right? You establish a pilot program and then we had to make sure we could sell it, right?
Correct.
Which was a lift in and of itself. But then, as when 2018 Farm Bill passed, opened up the floodgates, and all of a sudden we're looking at, a multi-billion-dollar industry on hemp extracts, and there was a lot of public safety concerns with that, right?
Well, there were two imperatives at play at the same time. One had to do with the USDA making noise about not allowing hemp extracts in any products whatsoever, food, drink, or dietary supplements. So the first order of business was to basically talk our colleagues and, of course, many of our policymakers at the governor's level to go along with us to at least allow a dietary supplement standard to be used, which a lot of states didn't embrace. So we were playing defense in a way to protect our industry. Because if we had just folded up, there would have been a lot of people exposed to, great risk and loss. So we had a rapid protection around them, but also there was a consumer imperative, because consumers were attracted to these products, but they had no idea what they were buying, and they didn't realize the information they were missing. And I would find these products at gas stations and a variety of dicey operations, and you couldn't tell the difference between those products that could have had, and in fact were tested in some instances to have synthetic marijuana and other questionable substances. You couldn't tell that product from a legitimate product produced by someone locally. So we had an imperative to protect our farmers from the FDA and our producers, and also really an imperative to protect the consumers.
And so, and a way that the Hemp Extract Bill does that is it says that, CBD is a dietary supplement, right? And that runs contrary to the FDA stance, right? And so, I mean, that is a huge lift, and that is something that, is unique, nationwide, and that a state is coming out and saying that, yes, it is a dietary supplement, and we're going to regulate it, and not only that is recognize that New York City, and New York is one of the largest markets in the United States, so not only is our producers going to have to adhere to the dietary supplement standards, good manufacturing practices, labeling standards, et cetera, but all products sold in New York would have to adhere to those standards. And there was some opposition to that, right? And so I think when you regulate any industry,
not from New York consumers,
not from New York consumers, right? Or necessarily not from New York producers, right? So how challenging was it really to get the Hemp Extract Bill passed last year?
Well, it's obviously a lot of moving parts, trying to explain to people what a hemp extract is. First of all, it took me a long time to convince my colleagues that this was a valuable commodity, that it could be used for so many different things, the fiber and the grain side, and then to really have to help them understand that this particular part of the plant that we are now referring as hemp extracts has so many nutritional and potentially pharmaceutical aspects that it required a different set of policies and regulations. But they generally trust me at this point about this. So it wasn't as difficult as you might expect, because once we got the bill on board, it passed, like you say, almost unanimously. We had some resistance from out-of-state forces that really did not want New York State, one of the largest consumer markets in the country, setting a high standard like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think one thing, too, the foresight to separate the regulations that govern industrial use hemp and hemp extracts is important, and something that the USDA didn't do, right? And that's something that is going to create a lot of problems, a lot of barriers to entry for the industrial side, right? Because if we go back and talk about what were some of the original, purposes of setting up a program here, manufacturing and that's certainly not just the manufacturing of dietary supplements, but the manufacturing of building materials, food, etc. Right? And so, from going to and looking at locally, right? Because I mean, you chair the agricultural committee in the assembly, but you're also the representative of Binghamton, and the dynamics has changed in government, right, where you have a Democratic majority, but some of the realities, the economic realities in upstate New York haven't, right, and so we're still talking about that, whether that's a Republican majority in the Senate or now a Democrat. How do we, move Binghamton and these former places where Binghamton was a hub of innovation and manufacturing nationally, and so how do you see hemp fitting into that part? I mean, as part of it, right? Obviously, we have Binghamton University and the growth there, but how does hemp kind of fit into, your idea of how Binghamton moves into this next century and leads in innovation again?
Well, I mean, it fits in, and people have bought in, and I feel like I've been successful in building a dream that people have that they can see. What's been frustrating is that we haven't worked out all the kinks in our supply chain, and there has to be just a huge market correction in terms of the prices that are being charged for consumers, what's involved in going from, in fact, the field to the market.
Yep.
I've had people who honestly thought this product would fly off the shelves. Well, it doesn't go from the farm to the shelves without so many steps in between. So I'm very concerned that we can all be circumspect about this and smart moving forward to make sure that people know what they're getting into, and that they have, in fact, an end user for whatever they're growing. But at the end of the day, people here want to build things. They want to manufacture things. We were a manufacturing hub, not only a hub of innovation, but a place that built things.
Yeah.
And we still have a lot of the old bones of that in our area, not only here, but across the upstate cities. So, people are very encouraged by it, but there's a fragile nature to this. They will get discouraged easily, and I want to make sure they understand we're in this for the long haul.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that when you talk about some of the supply chain working out, and we obviously in the midst of a significant market correction nationwide, and this is something that has touched every part of the country in terms of the downward pressure on product that farmers have produced, right, and the commoditization of hemp specifically for hemp extracts, right. But lost in that is, we've seen the prices of fiber rise because of a lower supply, right?
Sure.
And, so when we look at the other opportunities and we talk about fiber, is Binghamton better situated than other parts of the country? I mean, Binghamton might not be better situated than other parts of the country to be the dietary supplement hub, right? I mean, Salt Lake City is already the hub of dietary supplements throughout the country, regardless, right? Northern Jersey produces a lot of dietary supplements, but does Binghamton have some advantages when we talk about building materials, when we talk about clean energy, and when we talk about how fiber and hemp fits into the overall progress of Binghamton in terms of being a leader in, when we talk about the greatest challenge of our generation, greatest challenge of this century, of this millennia, is climate change, right? So,
Sure.
so do you think that Binghamton is in a unique position, and in New York in general is a unique position to lead on that, and hemp is a piece of that?
Well, I mean, certainly Southern Tier has been portrayed by the governor and others as really the sort of the hotbed for this development on all levels.
Yeah.
I do feel like we sort of went down a different trail for a while, viewing the Southern Tier as a grow region, a marketable grow region for hemp extracts. And now we have to rethink that strategy. And so as we move into perhaps this other approach that you're talking about, there remains the pollination issue that we have to be mindful of. But we've got a lot of potential here. It would be enormously helpful if economic development planners and others could be at the table at the same time with maps and guidance, so that when people want to enter this line of work and this type of expansion for their existing farms, that they are consulting with everyone, so that we can have something that works for everyone. But we did go down a different trail there, as you might recall. That we wanted to have grow regions, and this was going to be a CBD grow region.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah.
But we have
Absolutely.
too much of it.
We have too much of it. And I think that there's a lot of CBD grow regions throughout the country, right? And
Sure.
so, but, part of me wonders, all this capital that was infused after the 2018 Farm Bill that was used to build these CBD processing facilities and, purchase massive amounts of very expensive seed and all this equipment, could have that capital been better used to start to develop the fiber pipelines?
Well, I mean, hindsight, everything makes sense.
Yeah.
It's all very clear. Yeah, I think this is all going to correct itself out. So
Yeah.
we're going to have a robust market across the board for a variety of things. But yeah, I think you're on the right track talking more fiber and grain. I have long lamented the fact that we haven't had, co-locators come along and to try to build upon the availability of this biomass, these raw materials. And I'm hoping that's going to come along. I don't want people to get discouraged, however, as to what occurred. Also, I think many of us were surprised that the sheer number of permits that went out and the proportion that went to growing hemp extracts. I was frankly surprised.
Yeah.
I really thought people would take advantage of something viewed as a little less risky, especially in light of the FDA.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens there. But
Yeah, and I wonder if that's a critical mass of, continued downward pressure on all commodities across the board, the trade war, and making all these farmers, in states beyond New York really desperate for a new opportunity. And, I wonder if that's been adding to the oversupply. But can we take a lesson from that, right?
Absolutely.
And say, why don't we look at this not as the profitability of next year, but of next year, 5 years, 10 years, and 20 years down the line. And maybe, as a community here and as an industry in New York, look to weather storms, because if it's happening this year with hemp extracts, it's probably going to happen again with hemp, right? And so how do we, see ourselves in a longer term? And so, as the state is looking at cannabis more holistically here, right? And with, Governor Cuomo and the legislature really pushing for the passage of adult use cannabis, where do you think, hemp plays into that conversation? And then also, where do you think Binghamton and the area, Broome County and Southern Tier in general, really play into the picture of an industry that, from the Rockefeller Institute of Government says it could be $30 to $40 billion and create 30,000 jobs.
Well, my whole focus has been to position us for this. We've had a couple of setbacks here, but in general, I think the sky is the limit here.
Yeah.
Again, I have to emphasize or harp on this, the need for coordination. I mean, New York State, I think, has excelled at having all levels of government, at the agency level, the governor's level, legislative, all be on the same page here, really working collaboratively in a way I've never really seen, this type of cooperation for people who very much want to see this new commodity succeed. So I feel positive about that. It's at the local level, the local regional planners who I think have to step up and get more engaged in this. Our local county legislators, our local elected officials. I feel have been watching this somewhat from the sidelines.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going over there?
Yep.
How are you doing with that? And I keep coming back to them and saying, you must play a role in this. This isn't some casual observation. You need to be engaged in.
Yep.
So our regional economic councils have to be more engaged. I think that to a certain extent, they want to be, but I think there's a knowledge gap there that is quite obvious in many regards. And there are people like us who can be enormously helpful to them. So I think all the pieces are there for a really great picture. It just needs to be put into focus by more local involvement, more local planners. But yeah, unlike a lot of states, we have everyone rooting for this.
Yep.
And the stigma has been dramatically reduced. Consumers are involved, manufacturers are looking at it. I think we've tripped over ourselves a little bit to get out the gate. But I think it's going to be fine in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that entrepreneurs have a lot to do with engaging their local, whether it's lawmakers or, the Chamber of Commerce or, economic development, and pushing them and then bringing them plans that are looking at more longevity. And I think, the focus maybe shift away from, okay, we need to attract the largest cannabis company here and here to Binghamton, where why don't we grow it here?
Oh, well, you're
from within.
You're singing my song right there. My whole intention was to home grow. you know, an IBM and Endicott Johnson, they came from small business development beginnings, and they grew into mega companies.
Yeah.
My concern for a very long time for this community is that they were looking for another big place, big company to come save us. And I thought we had finally turned the corner on that.
Yeah.
We didn't want that. We want the pride of our own development. And
Absolutely.
I think everyone is in general agreement to that. But
Yep. And just getting involved is the first step. IBM started making clocks, right? So, you know, you can start. Sorry, yeah.
time recording clocks.
Yeah, and so, you know, I think that entrepreneurs locally can go and look at, okay, I want to get involved in cannabis. I don't know where the business is going to end up, but how can I apply my specific skills? How can I engage with the local university and bring the talent that's coming out of there and keep them here?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, you know, as someone who went to Binghamton University, I know a lot of people want to stay in Binghamton. They want to see the opportunities, and I think cannabis has been a very exciting opportunity that they've wanted to go. So
I would just add to your last remark, the community colleges.
Yes.
And our BOCES, some of those really basic skills and the types of curriculum that I think are better suited for our community colleges are what we're hoping to see develop.
Yeah.
There's a lot of aspects to this: control environment, agriculture,
Yep.
lighting systems, you name it. Metalwork,
Yep.
electrical, you name the specialty. We need them on board here.
Yep.
Again, there's been a lot of observers who want to see how this is going, and more people who step up, the more integrated we can.
Yeah.
You know, more integrated system we can put out.
Yeah, and the more diversity of people that step up, you
Yes.
know, from their skill the communities they come from the socioeconomic levels,
Mm-hmm.
the more we have, the more ideas are going to start to flow, and the more prosperous, you know, we can all be, right? Like I said, why are we looking, you know, away when we have the talent, we have the capabilities, we have the capital, we have the facilities right here to do it ourselves, right?
Yeah, right now, what I want to try to resist is this narrative that this was all pie in the sky.
Yeah.
And any new thing at this scale is going to have some hiccups in
Yeah.
the beginning. But this is definitely not pie in the sky. This is real pie.
This is real, exactly, and there's real opportunity on the table.
Definitely.
So, as a lawmaker, what's the next step? What's the next priority for you?
Well, you know, we did a lot of work over the years to boost the craft beverage industry in New York
Yep.
State, creating that farm brewery license, for example. I'm very mindful of farmers who are growing flour, who would like to have the opportunity to do direct sales to consumers.
Yeah.
I know it's going to take some doing to try to persuade the Department of Health and others that this is something to look at, but I think this may be a way of a couple of different approaches to addressing the oversupply.
Yeah.
One, direct sales, but also we've given the Department of Health an opening to allow for the use of CBD flour in drinks and in food,
Yep.
which isn't currently allowable. And I think they're going to get there, and we'll do it in a way that is research-based and that has some credibility and consumer confidence and protections.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to help enormously. Again, I think our growers got out in front of the system. That's going to help protect them, consumers, and to guarantee an economic success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that at this point, the industry is looking to you as the leader and as someone who's delivered over and over again, you know, for their interests. And you know, I think the stakeholders, the major stakeholders involved, are excited to see what comes, and they're excited to know that their voice is at the table with you, whether that's on the agriculture committee, whether that's, you know, with your colleagues, or that's, you know, going directly to the agencies or to the executive and saying, this is what's happening on the ground and this is how we can remedy it.
Well, the positive news is New York has not overreacted. We haven't pulled items off the shelves.
Yeah.
We haven't, you know, rolled back some of our policies and our regulations. We're pretty gung-ho.
Yeah.
And the governor is, to his credit, right at the top of the list here in terms of supporters, which is good.
Excellent. Well, we're excited, and we're excited to have you back at some point and look back and see, you know, how some of these things came to fruition.
Sounds good.
All right.
Great.
Thanks, Donna. Cool.
Thank you.